How a story starts is just as important as how the story ends, and sometimes the start is the most entertaining part of the story. So let's go over a checklist of what every good story beginning needs to have. Hey, Walter here, doing what I can to help make comics easier, demystifying the process because it shouldn't be overwhelming or daunting to tell your story. I make videos about demystifying the process behind writing and drawing your comics, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if that is something you're into. Now, character, story, location, these are the three ingredients that are going to make up the rocket fuel for your story. It's going to propel the reader from the start of your story to the very end. And if you use too little of one or have a poorly mixed concoction, the reader is going to crash and burn and move on from your story to another story. So let's go over all the things we need to make these ingredients super powerful and figure out how to make them work together in your story. Characters are my favorite part of any story. They're what keep me coming back. I'll watch anything with Scooby-Doo and the gang because I love those characters. I don't really care that they're solving the exact same mysteries over and over again. Now, obviously, your characters are going to grow and show new sides of their personality as the story progresses, but I think it's really important to give your reader enough information about your character so that they can care about that character. And to do that, I think we need to show these three aspects of your character: name, life, and appeal. Names are easy, right? Anytime somebody introduces themselves, they start off with their name. It's really hard to engage with somebody when you don't know their name. So you want to let the reader know what your characters' names are as early as possible. And at the start of your story, you want to repeat it a few times because it's kind of hard to remember somebody's name when they just say it once. And actually, you want to repeat it through your entire story. Find ways to sprinkle characters' names into the dialogue. Now, here's a few tips about actually picking a character's name. One, you don't want to have similar sounding names. I even try to stay away from using the same consonant if I can. I don't want to have a Bob, a Barbara, and a Brian. I also try to stay away from similar names that have a similar rhythm or a rhyme to them, like Rylan and Dylan and Gershwin. Two, I also think about how easy names are to pronounce. This might be more of a personal choice for me because I read a lot of fantasy stories and I never know how to pronounce any of their names. And sometimes because they're so complicated, I forget which characters are which. Three, for help selecting names, look at other media, movies, books. You can also look at baby name databases with Google. Like if your character is of a certain descent, you can Google Irish boys' names. And then once you pick a name, you want to say the name out loud in the personality of the character and see if the name fits that personality. Like if a guy is supposed to be a big, brave, bold, in-your-face character and you name him Severus Snape, it doesn't quite ring true. Severus Snape! And yes, I do love Harry Potter. Next up is a character's life and their appeal, which are very closely related. Both are going to show the reader why they should actually care about your character. Now, life is going to show what the character has to deal with, and it can also be a catalyst for the rest of your story. And then appeal is going to be your character's personality traits that make them interesting to your reader. Now, a character's life can dictate a character's personalities, or vice versa. Like a character could be very, very smart and win all these awards, but maybe it makes him egotistical. Or a character could be very shy, so they live a very lonely life. Or maybe the character is super funny and has tons of friends, but none of them take him seriously, so he's never able to progress forward in his life. Now, character traits don't always have to be positive. Sometimes they can be negative. It just has to be some way of connecting the reader to that character so the reader can understand that character and in some way empathize or feel or understand that character. Whatever your character's life and appeal are, you need to find a way to show them to the reader as quickly as possible. If it's episode 10 and your reader still doesn't know anything about your character, it might be too late. The reader's going to get bored and they're going to move on to another story. And this is where character and story smash together to create the magic. Let's go over an example to see what I'm talking about. Let's say your story starts off with an alien invasion and your main character runs to find shelter. Well, I don't think the reader's going to care. They've seen a million alien invasion movies, and this one apparently isn't any different. But what if Sarah is at home holding her newborn baby? Her husband leaves because he's going to be part of a diplomatic envoy to an alien ship that appeared in the sky. So she's at home, she's watching the news, and the alien ship suddenly blasts the diplomatic envoy out of the sky. Her husband's dead and the aliens are invading. Well, we realize the stakes are really high for Sarah. All she has left now is her baby, and she's going to do anything to protect that baby. It's an emotion that we can understand, and it connects the reader to the character. In the real world, things happen to people all the time, but when it happens to somebody we know personally, it carries more weight and affects us more deeply. So when you're starting off your story, you want to think of ways to make your character and your reader become best friends, or potentially worst enemies, and the character and the story need to complement each other, which means it's time for another story example. Imagine a story with a character named Blaine. His life is that he's a spoiled, rotten son of a billionaire criminal. Blaine's appeal is that he treats people like crap. Now the story starts off with Blaine winning the lottery. Who cares? That's not a very good story at all. The more interesting story would be, what if Blaine loses everything? Because now we get to see Blaine, this guy we hate, have to struggle and, hopefully grow into a better person. In each of these story examples, there's a hook. Now the hook is the actual start to your story. Everything beforehand was just priming the reader. If you look at driving a car as an example, getting in the car, putting on your seatbelt, and turning on the engine is the primer. The actual hook is going to be hitting the gas pedal. In the case of Blaine, the hook was him losing all of his money. With Sarah, the hook was the death of her husband and the alien invasion happening. And with the character aspects, you want to get to the hook as quickly as possible without negatively impacting all of your character building. And then on the flip side of that, of course, you don't want to have the character building delaying the reveal of your hook. Which leads to the question of how much character building is enough and how quickly do you have to get to the world building and the reveal of the hook. There is no one single answer, but as a basic guideline, we can use this. Most webtoons try to get to the hook within the first 3 episodes. Print comics try to get to it in the first issue, and movies generally try to get to it in the first 20 to 30 minutes. So that will give you a place to start with how quickly you need to get to your hook. You want to hit your reader with the hook as quickly as possible, which means you need to find ways to quickly relate that information. For example, Sarah is struggling to put a diaper on her baby. We instantly know that she's a new mother, and sometimes it can be hard when we're trying to relate something. We don't realize that we're taking way too long to show that information, which is why it's helpful to let somebody else read your script, because they're going to see it from another angle. And of course, you don't just have one hook. Readers have short attention spans. They're going to be trying to wriggle off of your hook. So you want to hit them with one hook, another hook, all the way to the very end of your story. And finally is location and world. Now, depending on your story, your world might be its own character with its own life and its own appeal, which means you need to find a way to quickly show the reader why your world is appealing and how it's going to be a part of the story and how it's going to affect that story. Now, a great way to learn all of these things is to just analyze some of your favorite comics. Pull up your favorite comic and then write down what happens in episode 1. Who did they introduce? What secrets were revealed? How did it end? And do the same thing for episode 2 and episode 3. Write down, how quickly did the hook land? What did we know about each of the characters before the hook was revealed? You can also learn a lot of storytelling from the stories that you don't like. Sometimes you can learn even more. Analyze a comic you tried but you didn't connect with. See if you can figure out why you didn't connect with that story, and see if you can come up ways of fixing that story. Side note, keep these criticisms to yourself. Do not go around offering unsolicited criticisms. It's not usually positively received, and it's just not cool in general. All right, so those are all the things I think about when I'm starting my story. It's gonna make your story stronger and really engage your readers. But what about you? What do you like to think about when you start your story? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to help support me and these videos, consider checking out my graphic novels or my t-shirts or my Patreon. All the links are down below. Or just share this video with your friends and tell them if they want to keep making comics easier, be sure to like, link, love, hug, and hit that sub button for more sweet, sweet goodness. Peace.